I don't know. I think there's
It
a
was live.
fantastic. It still
Welcome,
says
welcome. You're gonna welcome everybody to your channel, your first live. Come on, man. Do your
It
job.
was live. Yay! We're gonna try to do a Hash Wednesday here. Yeah, this is actually technically my first live on YouTube. What do you know? I don't even know if I've ever actually uploaded anything on YouTube either. So, first time. We're gonna play by ear here. I haven't even pulled up the chat yet. If we ever actually get anyone in the room, which is probably unlikely at this point, but you never know.
you want to let them interact, right?
We want to look them in the eye.
It's
So,
I think we have one 5-minute long Hash Wednesday on my channel before YouTube just shit the bed. So this is technically the second Hash Wednesday, but the first one on your channel. What is your channel called? What's your channel?
Right now it's just Fumidor. I don't know. I might change it to something else. By the way, this is kind of idiotic. I have now lost my own channel, my own video to see where my chat is.
Isn't that the best way to do it though? So you don't have reverb, or do you mean you can't even?
Well, but I can't even see the chat. I don't know where the video is. It's idiotic.
Well, first of all, I don't even see that you have a video that's even live.
This is idiotic. My thing is live.
I see a video that's live.
You do?
Yeah, I see the word live in the top right corner, and I'm looking at the both of you in a Google Hangout. Oh, you mean you're on his YouTube channel and you're looking?
Yeah, like I don't see it even in YouTube. I don't see any warning. I don't see any notification.
I mean, I agree with you. I don't see anything on my channel either.
You're shadow banned.
Is that what it is?
I don't know. I'm just using buzzwords.
I mean, what the fuck? I'm live, apparently. But I for the life of me, I can't. There's nowhere on my channel that has anything to do with my video.
Mark it private? Did you?
Is your account private?
Shouldn't be.
I don't even know if that's a thing.
No, I don't think that matters. Yeah, so I can't share it because I can't even find the link.
Oh my god, what a clusterfuck!
Did you like create a video that had like a name and a time and a
Hash Wednesday? I can even see it right here. Hash Wednesday trend. Okay, now I can see something. Yeah, there we go. We are live. We are.
I'm gonna mute my mic and heat up this little silicone nectar collector and see how big of a dab I can take.
Hey, I'll take a nectar collector dab with you.
Right. There we go.
I need a dab. Fumidor's stressing me. God damn you.
I finally did find a chat window, but that doesn't explain why you can't find mine. I don't understand it.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah, we're not going to get too many viewers if we don't have. Yeah, whatever.
I can't even share it out. I don't even know where it's at. So I'll take a dab and then I'll find it. We'll get there eventually. Hey, it's a test. We're trying it out.
Or should we invite 710 or?
Yeah, definitely.
So.
Are we making 710 plans?
7/7, by the way. 7/7. What is that? July 7th. Yeah, I guess it's a Sunday. Flavor Cup. Cannabis Club.
Whereabouts?
Cannabis Club.
Who hosts it?
Cheers.
I am hosting. Well, Portland Cannabis Tasting Club is hosting.
Oh, it's a house cup.
Open to. I don't know. I might just leave it open to everybody. Anyone who brings a flavor, best flavor wins. I don't know. We might get fucked with. You know, like some random asshole might come in. If there's enough entries, maybe we'll do a professionals and amateurs. We'll see. But
I thought about hosting a 710 campout out at my process
that'd be cool.
site. I'm not sure if you've seen what it looks like, but it's like surrounded by vineyards and there's a pond and a giant field, and we're going to be growing hemp right there this year, so could be fun. I went to this event last year, and I guess it's been going on for a couple years now. It's Bull Run Craft Cannabis. They have they call it Live on the Dock. And they have a couple bands play. Last year it was a Police cover band and who was the other cover band? Led Zeppelin or something. It was a real fun time. It was a camp out on a hemp farm. And I think there was a cannabis farm somewhere on the property as well, but a little more out of the way.
So
They had a bunch of beer and a bunch of food.
just a reminder, Eric's pretty quiet, so I would probably turn his volume up.
Let
You
me
need
do that
to
for a moment.
control those things. And you're the only one unless you give that control over to anybody else to use.
Gotcha. How would I do that?
It's in your toolbox.
All right, I will
On
just
the right hand side.
then I'll
But
turn
you
him
can
up.
still hear me, yeah, Tara?
Yep.
Okay.
You're just
So-
quieter. It's because your mic. If you have a better mic, it would be better.
So how much hemp were you wanting to grow this season?
Dude, I have no idea. It's just
Well, how
something
much space
we
do you
want
have?
to do. Like, so should I go and try and find some acreage? Should I just throw some out in, like a big garden area? Like, I have a whole bunch of like land I could like probably put some raised beds and put a bunch of
here's
stuff
the
out, or do
bottleneck.
I just like try
Here's
and
the
look for a
bottleneck.
field and actually plant hemp? You know, what's the deal?
So the problem everyone was running into last year.
Oh,
they were trying to-
hold on,
can hear you.
Farmex. I think I accidentally muted you. There you go. Oh, gee.
Hello.
There we go.
Hello. Okay, cool. So
So-
where people were running into a bottleneck last year was harvesting and drying. They could
I
plant
swear to you, it like. Hold on, I'm not trying to fuck with you. Mouse gets like stuck to the button. I'm not touching anything.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Cool.
So terrible.
So people were running into a bottleneck because they were able to plant more acreage and water more acreage than they could harvest and dry. Especially because the mold comes in real fast here in the Pacific Northwest, at least in our area. So you need to have a place to dry it.
Oh, we have a huge facility we could use to dry it.
Well, if you're able to dry thousands of pounds and you're able to afford solid seed, I mean, here's the deal. This is the last year where the testing's going to be all willy-nilly and it's going to be all wild, wild west, and you can basically grow whatever and sell whatever, and the cost of entry is dirt cheap. Next year, if you're not already established this year, it's going to be a little more difficult.
And why is that exactly?
So next year, everybody's going to have to meet federal standards that the USDA set out, that they want goals to be met by 2020, and Oregon's goals for 2020, along with like Washington's, basically say we're going to stop just testing for THC. We're going to test for THCA and THC combined. And they've only been testing the product in the field, not the final product. So if you want to sell it in state, you've been able to sell hot product just as long as you don't go over federal, state lines. So basically, your genetics are going to be a lot easier to get this year. Licensing fees are going to get raised next year. Security might go up.
So what about just looking at a small area and do breeding?
If you're doing breeding, there's a lot of other people that are trying to do that because they saw the Crawfords and a handful of other people make a lot of money this year. Especially since the goal for next year is to get stuff that's truly under 0.3 combined THC, THCA. So if you're going to breed, unless you have something really special, the goal is to breed something under 0.3 combined THC, THCA, no matter how high the CBD is. Even if it's only 3%, 4%, whatever. I mean, if you can get something that people aren't going to lose their whole crop, that's what's going to have value next year. If you can breed that between now and then, I'd go for it. If not, I try to grow as much bud as you can and sell it as trim bud. And if you can grow it under 0.3, you can ship it all over,
What about, I'm thinking what about the hash? Making hash and doing the CBD rosin. I mean, that kind of interests me.
There's definitely going to be a market for it. Most of the CBD extracts that get processed get turned into distillate and isolate. And even though CBD rosin is obviously a lot harder to scale up, there's definitely going to be a market for it. Just because people like you or other people that are interested in the craft extracts, would be willing to pay a little more. Yeah, you could definitely do it.
So, let's talk about like the Nohi, Nebraska stuff growing along the side of the road and all those other states where there used to be hemp. What are the thoughts of those? Like, could someone actually go along, harvest those type of seeds and actually plant them?
Well, you'd have to see what they test at, before you go and put your whole crop out. Typically, anything on the side of the road is ruderalis, and ruderalis is typically what we'd refer to like as an autoflower for the most part, or anything you breed with the ruderalis is going to kind of have, or often will have, autoflower tendencies. So it's a good starting space, but if it has too much THC, you'll lose your crop.
Yeah, I've wondered about that. So Tara was talking about maybe in our last session that didn't go live about the roadside, the Nebraska or Oklahoma weed. Basically, is it really autoflowers? Because my understanding was that the ruderalis came from Russia. Was it? Are they autoflowers that because they're able to live, they just happen to live there, or did they spontaneously evolve? Like, how does it work there? Do you know?
I mean, they came from Russia originally, but we've had cannabis in the United States since the probably 15 or 1600s, maybe beforehand.
But my understanding was that autoflowers are like, holy shit, what's that? Have they been around for the longest time? We just didn't know.
Yeah, autoflower is just a name that we gave to it. Ruderalis basically has the 60 to 77 day life cycle, and anything that we breed into the ruderalis has, like, depending on if it's homozygous or heterozygous, 25 to 50% of their offspring would be autoflower, and then from there you could breed.
No, I guess my point is just that, like, where did those originally come from? Like, no one actually bred the autoflower from Siberia into those plants. Did they just spontaneously come up as natural? What am I trying to say? Or were they old seeds from a grow that had autoflowers in or something?
Yeah, I don't know. I know the name ruderalis is from Russia, but that doesn't necessarily mean that
there could be multiple
genetics are from there.
Yeah, that's fair.
And they also, that part of the world, I say that part of the world, Russia's fucking huge.
Right.
Parts of Russia have like 24 hours of darkness or 24 hours of light for certain times of the year, much like Alaska or anywhere else in the Arctic Circle.
Could have just as easily come from Alaska. You're right, yeah.
Which Alaska's known for their cannabis, at least as of recent 20 years.
I wonder how that'll change in the future. I didn't mean to change the whole subject or whatever. I just watched the, I don't know, maybe like Steve D'Angelo maybe has been in Colombia and shooting a bunch of videos on Instagram and stuff. It's just really interesting to see, like, everything is different for them. Like in Alaska, we're talking about, maybe autoflowers because the sun is always shining. In Colombia, the sun never shines enough, so they always have to supplement it so the plants will actually flower or not flower and all kinds of.
Oh, yeah, no, Colombia, I did consultation for a group that's doing seed to sale, CBD growth and processing out there. And they, I asked them what their, growing season was like. And they're like, you're around 70 degrees, plus or minus 10. Obviously, they were talking Celsius, paraphrasing. But they had 30 acres of greenhouses, and they were just going to bust them out year round, do light depth supplemental lighting if needed. Actually, they might not have been doing light depth. It was probably just supplemental lighting for a couple months out of the year.
That's crazy.
But I was helping them in the processing end of things, not the growing end of things. So I don't know their greenhouse situation all that well.
Great. So if I mute you accidentally right now, it's not my fault.
Right on.
There we go. It didn't work. Okay, perfect.
I still don't see your YouTube link anywhere.
It's really bizarre. We're definitely live. It says that we're live. It shows everything good, and I did actually manage to put in my chat. But you're right. There's no announcement.
You have a chat?
You know what? There might be two fumidors. Do you have the right fumidor?
Yeah. The dog.
The dog.
Because I had to. What did I have to do? I think when I was at the Cannabis Club, I set up a guest fumidor, so you might maybe have the wrong one.
They both have dogs.
They're both, and it's almost the same picture because I think I had to use it like It was a whole big thing. That's why I was super angry at the Embracing Organic show one day. I was like, they were like, "Hey, how you doing?" I was like,
It only shows one.
"Oh, this is pretty frustrating." Well, at least we're doing it. Like I say, we ripped the bandage off. Maybe
Well, it says
it's
we're
around for
live.
20 minutes, and we'll I don't know. We'll see.
So bizarre. Well, so
Next week we can get it finally figured out.
maybe you had to have 100 subs before you did a live.
It didn't say anything like that.
I didn't have that problem. I just had the same 24-hour
Yep.
wait, and my
Oh, really?
lives were posted.
And then they were making 1,000 for the phone, so I don't know. It's so confusing. YouTube, they change their rules all the time.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, that's interesting.
But I
It's
can't
such a
share it
gigantic
out.
company,
That's my problem. I want the link because I can't share. Oh,
Yeah, when I go to Jesus, it's so bizarre. Oh, anyway.
Right on.
Did I? Oh my gosh! I think I even just closed everything. This is so user unfriendly. It's really bizarre. Anyway, so speaking of hemp, Terry had questions about hemp. I have questions about hemp. What do you think about it? Is it a fool's errand? Is it a gold rush? Is it are people going to get burned at the end of the year? What's the story? Are people
Definitely some people are going to lose money this year.
Hmm.
I think a lot of people are investing in it and started investing in it a couple months ago before they realized how many people were getting into it this year all over the country and the world. I'm super curious to see what the market looks like come harvest season, or maybe beforehand when light depths or autoflowers start coming in, Because last year, we had people were doing pick it out of the field. Like people were giving me hemp plants. I was stuffing the back of my car with hemp plants in exchange for an hour or two of work. Or you could go and pick your own and like pay to pick it out of the field stuff in Southern Oregon. And people were giving it away like dirt cheap. And then once everything was kind of dried and trimmed, everything was like $200 a pound for trimmed flower. And then now it's like $800 plus for trimmed flower 6, 7, 8 months later, because harvest and trimming was only November, December, because people were taking stuff out of the field October, November. So people last year, some people did contracts and sold out real early or sold out before it was even grown. And they definitely didn't make as much money as everybody else. I don't know. I mean, there's people who made a shit ton of money last year and people who lost money. And then this year, I think it's going to be the same, but on a larger scale. That's why I'm
Who do
trying
you think
to
is going to make the most money besides like those, the big guys in Eugene, the big breeders?
Shit, I don't know. Last year I knew a bunch of growers and nobody had a processor. Everybody's looking for a processor. And this year I know a bunch of people that have sunk hundreds of thousands or millions and millions into processing facilities. And I think only some of them are going to come out on top.
Interesting. Just because it's going to be inefficient or what?
I think the amount of processors I see right now looking for shit to process, I think that there's only going to be a couple months worth of processing that's going to keep everybody working.
And the rest of the year they'll just be fallow, basically.
Yeah, I think there might be some people that lock down contracts, but I mean everybody wants their shit done fast, so everybody's going to go get it done with whoever has availability, and then it's all going to be done, and then they're going to be looking to buy biomass just so that they can keep their machines on, and they're going to have to go spend some of their money on biomass and operating, and then try to sell their product. We'll see. I think next year it's going to be whoever's able to lock down genetics, because like I said, they're going to start testing for combined THC, THCA. And if you don't have your genetics locked down and you can't even pass a field test, or if you pass a field test and you can't do anything with your final product, that'll be an issue.
But then again, when I've talked to some people, and I've said, "Oh, a friend of mine says that in the future the genetics aren't going to be so locked down that a lot of the breeders are maybe, flying by the seat of their pants or whatever." And I keep hearing, "No, no, 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 no. My buddy or my this friend or my this other guy, no, they have it locked down." Is that just bullshit? Where those companies say that kind of stuff, or do they really? Are they? I mean, it would be foolish not to anticipate that, right?
I think it'd be foolish not to anticipate it. But for instance, how many people this year had stable, high CBD, low THC, feminized seeds? A bunch. But Oregon CBD was consistently sold out.
Hmm.
So it's like, I don't know. And if they had it, then why is every hemp I see over zero point 0.3 combined THC, THCA? Like, it's rare to find something that actually has desirable CBD and passable THC.
Oh, interesting.
So I'm sure some people have it, but the plants are probably less than desirable, or maybe they're not super stable. Or if they do have it, they're going to rise to the top like Oregon CBD did this year.
Well, I thought that you were saying that the tests weren't actually accurate, though, right? The field tests weren't?
Well, what I'm saying is that they're in the field, they're going and they're testing for THC, but that the plant has THCA. And what they should be doing is testing for combined THC and THCA. And if they really wanted to get scientific, they could say that the THC is the THCA times 0.877, because that's the rate of degradation. That's the rate of mass or volume or whatever it would lose if decarboxylated, which is how they do it on our state tests. So if I have THCA, they say total THC is my THCA times 0.877, which is going to be a lower number. Which is why if I have crystals that are 100%, the test calls them 87.7%, which is silly, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you've ever bought crystals from Select or anybody else that sells crystallate. It'll say on the box 99.9%, and then on the testing label right below it, it'll say 87.7%, and you're like, what the fuck? But that's the science.
I have to say, I don't even shop at dispensaries anymore. I'm always disappointed when I don't have a story to tell about them.
Right. I still go to dispensaries to pick up Oregon Leaf magazines.
Yeah. They have the Oregon Leaf at the Cannabis Club. I just pick it up there.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be in Oregon Leaf's concentrates issue this July.
Are you? Right on.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, I just an hour ago received a text from their editor about when they're gonna come visit me. They'll be at my lab the 10th of this month.
That's super cool.
I'm not sure if you remember, about a month ago, I had a reporter from the AP out at my lab.
You mentioned it, yeah.
I posted on Instagram that she was coming out and was looking for growers. Have not heard from her at all.
How interesting.
So, and she told me before that she had been working on that story for a couple months now.
Who's that?
The Associated Press.
Oh, okay. I don't know that.
They're like a news aggregator. They send out stories to. They don't have a newspaper themselves. They do have a website, but they have tons of reporters, and their stories will show up in the New York Times, Washington Post, Boston Globe, stuff like that. And those newspapers will pay for those stories so that they can share the stories around the country.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's one way that they can have a story that goes to the LA Times, New York Times, all that kind of stuff. Anyway.
There was a little lady that at that cannabis cultivation conference that was, I think she did a cannabis journal or something. I was going to talk to her.
Right.
Yeah, oh, I might even have that journal anyway.
Yeah, I thought she sounded very interesting.
Are you talking about the weed blog?
Blonde,
curly hair blonde lady.
The gal, she has a black hat and red. She wears black and red. That's kind of her shtick, she said. Older. Well, petite older lady.
Was it this?
Was it that one? Oh man. Now you're gonna make
This lady was. This wasn't the cover lady, but the lady that ran this magazine, Pacific Northwest Cannabis Growers. I think she had like a red hat, something.
black hat. No black hat.
Maybe. I remember dressed in a funny, interesting way.
Cannabis growers. Where did I get that one?
So, what was I going to say with him? I was actually curious about with what could amount to millions of dollars of hemp in the fields. I mean, I know that people have to like every cannabis grower, even medical grower, has to fence off their property. What about the hemp fields? Like, what about 50-acre hemp fields? I mean, it's kind of difficult to rip off 50 acres of hemp, but still.
So let me give you a couple anecdotes. First, I've mentioned before that last year, Cassie and I helped a farmer sex 3 acres late in the season, around August, fully grown, 6-foot tall plants, showing at least healthy fruit flowers.
You're
Sometimes big
barely
balls.
sexy. Okay, what?
Somebody planted regular seed. Somebody planted 3 acres of regular seed and didn't know how to properly sex their plants, and called my fiance and I in to sex 6,000 plants over 3 acres by hand in August, and they were showing like free flowers to say the least. They were maybe in week 1 of flower.
Oh no.
So we were going through over the course of a couple days and taking 3,000 plants out of 6,000 approximately over the course of a couple days. What was crazy to me was looking at the field beforehand and during and after. Like, it was almost like we didn't even make a dent in the field.
Huh.
Then during harvest, like a month and a half or 2 months later, we were like making these like 10 or 15-foot piles next to dumpsters and just shucking it and filling dumpsters and like hauling the dumpsters off like 5 at a time. And after multiple days of that, we'd look out and the field was still like hefty. like there was so fucking much. And then I'd mentioned that one of the guys was paying me in hemp. I'd fill the whole. I borrowed my brother's Honda Civic one day and filled the trunk and the back seat like to the brim, like comically full of like hemp. And I cut the main stems off, so it was just big like 4-foot long colas. Like, dude, this stuff looked like, man, it was crazy. It was like you'd feel like a kid in a candy shop because I was going around and they were just like, take whatever the fuck you want. And like it looked like weed. It looked like and smelled like and tasted like the nicest weed.
And so your entire car was.
So I was just walking through a 3-acre field, going, I want that and that, and I was just pulling the nicest colas, the nicest per acres, and I filled the whole back of the car and the whole trunk. And I brought it to my basement, and I laid contractor bags all over the floor, and I laid it all over the floor after I hung up all my lines and hung up all my hanging baskets. And it dried, and it was like 6 pounds or 8 pounds. It was like a comically large amount of wet cannabis was like, and I was selling it for like, a couple $100, So it was like, it was a lot, but it wasn't a dent in the field. They left so much more in the field than you can fit in a car. So you'd have to have some coordinated effort. And if you didn't have light, and let's say the fields are only unattended for like 4, 6, or 8 hours, it's like, how much could you really take?
Will distillate labs have problems?
With that,
we'll be sending out, with thefts. There's going to be probably in some places hundreds or even thousands of gallons of CBD oil or whatever else.
Well, this 1 liter jar would be $5,000 to $10,000.
Wow. Well, you see,
so that's a lot easier to steal.
And so in other words, those places are going to have wonderful security this year, huh?
Is that wholesale? Is that retail? What?
So right now, buying wholesale, the jars that have above 0.3 THC go for about $5,000. The jars that have under 0.3, so you can actually ship it without watering it down, are going for about $8,000 to $10,000.
A jar?
And how many
liters?
grams?
Yes, a kilo. A kilo is the same as a liter because cannabis and water have similar density. So 1,000 mils of distillate, 1 liter, is going for between $5 and $10 a gram, being $5,000 and $10,000 a liter, which is then getting put into pens that are getting watered down considerably. Even more because they crystallize if you don't water them down. Like you have to. So they're selling pens that have 200, 400, 500 milligrams, which is like half a gram of distillate or a quarter gram of distillate for like 20, 30, 40 bucks.
Wow.
So honestly, if you grow a field of it and you have somebody process it for you and you let them keep a third or a half of what they process in exchange for instead of paying them, you know, you could end up with a couple jars that if you wait until everybody sells their jars off and you wait a couple months, I mean, they could be pretty valuable. Or you could make pens, or you could make lotions or tinctures or.
So, what is the amount of product that it would take to probably fill a jar? I know there's like different amounts, but average.
Let's say that for CBD bud, you're typically yielding, let's say, 10% by volume crude, 6% by volume distillate. So to get 1,000 grams, you would need 60,000. Oh no, hold on. I'm doing weird math. Hold on.
You're doing it. Dab time.
Yeah, dab time, right?
1,000 grams, you need about 5 grams of flour, I guess.
Spreadsheets. I've got spreadsheets because, like I said, I've been doing consultation for people for labs. They want to know how much with an average biomass percentage of 10 or 14 or whatever, what their average crude would be, what their average distillate would be. So let's say you get 1,000 beef from.
Oh, I wish I knew like a farmer around here. It'd be closer.
Let's see.
One thing about a nectar collector, it's nice because it gets all the bottom done. Out.
Maybe like 40 pounds.
Really?
Yeah. Because let's say the CBD biomass, bud, trim, whatever that you're processing is averaging like.
So 40 pounds is all I would need for a jar. I believe I could do 15 plants and get 40 pounds. So I've got room for 15 plants. I think I should do it.
I mean, you can grow more than 15 plants, I believe, because they are hemp plants, right? They're not subject to the medical rules, or are they?
But
this is
not legal advice, by the way. This is just a bunch of fuckers talking.
I know. But, you know, like I was saying, I know about what a 15-plant garden will return in one summer, can I say. So I was thinking, you know, that's all. Just a, you know, number thing is all. I was kind of getting an idea of what it would take to grow the amount of poundage needed for a jar.
Yeah.
I am really interested personally into making salves and tinctures and like actually giving it away for more medicinal things rather than I'm not really looking to actually sell it.
Well, you might not even want to make distillate then. You might want to make crude. And if you did crude, you'd have about twice as much crude. It'd be about half as potent, but you'd have more terpenes and other compounds that would be lost in winterization and distillation.
Oh, okay.
So, what's the difference when you make crude?
Yeah.
Do you then just not winterize it?
So here's the process. I'll take the flour, or whomever will take the flour, and we'll use butane or ethanol or a variety of methods. Rosin would also be crude because it's not refined. Anything that's basically coming out 40 to 60 something percent, you know, just unrefined lipids, waxes, flavonoids, terpenes, everything's still there. Then winterization, some people have different, you know, verbiage, but winterization, when most people say it in the cannabis industry, is you're adding a secondary solvent, being ethanol, sometimes hexane or heptane or other shit, but typically ethanol. You dissolve everything into your solution, and then you freeze it, and then fats and lipids and waxes and all sorts of, you know, boo boo falls out of your solution, and you have a lipid, waxy bullshit precipitate layer at the bottom. You pour that off through filters, you know, sometimes vacuum assisted, sometimes otherwise, and then from there, you would boil all that ethanol off, and then you would have winterized oil, and then if you were going to distill, you would then decarboxylate, and then distill, like in a short path or a wiped film or some sort of still to make distillate. And then that would be your starting material to make isolate as far as CBD is concerned.
Well, so then, okay, so but you wouldn't use the crude. You would never use the crude in like a pen, right? The crude is mainly
The crude would not work well in a pen, but the crude would be good for other things potentially. I mean, like FICO or RSO would be crude. Well,
Oh,
sometimes
RSO is actually
people
crude.
winterize. That's not 100% true. If it's high enough percentage, well, FICO is the full extract, and a lot of people would argue.
Okay, wait. What's that word again?
FICO or FECO. It's a full extract cannabis oil. People have been using it recently, past 5 years or so, as a replacement word or interchangeably
Full extract
with RSO.
cannabis oil.
Huh?
Full extract cannabis oil.
Right. Full extract cannabis oil.
Terrible name.
Which a lot of people use interchangeably with RSO, but a lot of people argue over the semantics of it. Some people would say it has to be made with ethanol or naphtha. Some people say it has to be winterized. Some people say it has to be full plant. But a lot of people are looking for full plant extract or FICO, or what I would call it as a processor, crude.
Very interesting. I really want to know more about that stuff. So can you process that then there? You'll be processing all that hemp stuff?
I can't process hemp in my OMMP.
You can't. Darn.
I have to use a friend's facility or drop my OMMP license.
Why is that?
Because the OHA won't allow me to hold both licenses and perform both functions in the same building simultaneously.
How big of a facility would you need?
Not too large, couple hundred square feet. I mean, you could do it in like a nice sized garage or a small barn on a relatively large scale. I mean, I say relatively large, being 100 or a couple 100 pounds a day. If you wanted to get into the 500,000 pound range, you'd need to be able to store a couple days worth of, you know, shit on site. And maybe
So
some a little larger.
Any one of them that travel around and actually go and process at other facilities? Do they do any of that?
Yes and no. There's people who are doing it, and we're doing it, but the licenses are not to people or any sort of mobile things. Much like a grow license or a processing license, it's it's licensed to a building on a tax lot with specific floor plans and specific SOPs. So for instance, if you already had a processing site, you could have somebody come in and work as a contractor, but you couldn't. Or you can send your stuff off to a processor, but you can't just have somebody come and bring all their stuff in and then leave. Like,
So maybe it would be worth it to maybe check into opening a processing facility here.
yeah, the problem is, you mean here, Washington?
Yeah, Washington, where I live.
Yeah, Washington maybe. Oregon, last year there was a huge need for it, and this year I think a bunch of people have put in millions of dollars to fill that hole. Washington, there might still be a need for it.
Well, I'm in
haven't followed the
Washington,
market.
so I'm in Eastern Washington. There's a big difference.
Right on. Yeah, Oregon's the same way. There's a handful of places that have popped up in the more populated areas, but then the more rural areas, which is actually where a lot of the farmers are, only have like one or two options.
Exactly.
Terry, you're kind of plugged into the ag market, or even just literally driving around in the country.
Oh, I am.
How much hemp do you see?
None.
None?
Okay, because I haven't been out in the farms yet. Like, I haven't been out driving around yet, and I haven't put my feelers out. But last year, there was supposed to be a hemp field, and I never did find it. And I talked to a few people, and it kind of seemed like it was like a hush-hush, like they didn't want people to know that they were going. I
saw it last year in Oregon off the side of major highways when I was driving around like wine and hop country around Salem. I mean, I saw just accidentally half a dozen hemp grows last year.
Well, I really haven't heard of that much yet. But this year, I'm hoping that there's going to be some, and I'm going to hopefully visit some fields. But I do know that Josh Dutch Blooms, he is planted hemp, so he is growing hemp, and I know that's going forward. In fact, I invited him to the call. He might join us. I shared a link. We'll see.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
So yeah, so hopefully he'll join. He said he might join up. So yeah, so he's actually planted, and so I don't really know what or anything more than that, other than he communicated that on a text today. So we'll see. And he has an aquaponics class coming up that he's going to be teaching at his farm.
Oh, that's right. He's out in Eastern Washington too, huh?
Yeah, he's up in Bellingham area, Birch Bay, actually. In that area, yeah, it's beautiful. He has a beautiful land. He's got trees all around it, and all this property, and yeah.
How is the I don't know, like the culture around there regarding hemp? You know, like it's probably not too cannabis friendly, but I'm just thinking like around here, if a farmer suddenly blows up a hemp field, it's still a little weird for a lot of people. Even though, like when you walk around, let's say Eugene or something, like everybody and their uncle probably is growing hemp. How does it feel out there? If you grew, or if you told someone you grew hemp, would they treat you like a weirdo or what?
No, I think if you said hemp, it would be okay. You said cannabis, that's a different story, right?
And why?
I don't know.
They know that
at
there's a
least in
difference.
Oregon, the past couple of years, there's been like hundreds of cannabis farms start up, and
Right.
it's just kind of become part of the. I mean, it's been part of the culture for 20 plus years, but
Sure.
now it's like in your face. Like you go out to eat, you see a bunch of people wearing hats from a dispensary they own or something.
It's not part of the culture here yet. It's this is still very religious territory. This is very conservative. You remember, we're on the eastern side of Washington and not the Seattle side, and we're like the eastern side of Oregon, right? You know, very conservative, and like my husband doesn't even really tell people that I even grow. Like that's kind of like a hush hush, because of course he deals with the fertilizer and chemical guys, right? So on the ag side, so those are all the farmers and the other type of farmers, not the cannabis farmers, but the other type of farmers, the ones that use all those Monsanto and Sygentas and
Right on.
So, yep. Cheers, man! I want another hit.
Cheers.
Yeah.
I guess we had so many questions. They were all banging up against each other.
If anybody you know is wanting to open a hemp CBD processing facility, we've been helping people design labs and pick out equipment. And like I said, we've got some spreadsheets ready to go.
We're looking to kind of what's the word? Diversify. We're looking at the options right now. We're been in contact with Joshua Steensland earlier. I was texting with him about hemp earlier. He was telling me the acreages and what I had and what he has available. But he basically is full consulting this year. He can't do any more consulting. He's so booked solid. And he's telling me about the acreage and what you can make. And yeah, I'm like, damn, I think I want in this stuff.
Right on. Well, setting up a processing site can be pretty affordable or pretty expensive depending on what the state requires and what your goals are as far as end product and daily throughput. But I mean, you can make, you can take a cheap washing machine or a cheap, spinner of sorts and ethanol and a couple small Chinese rotovapes, and you could do, tens of pounds a day and make.
What about anything though along the solventless mine? Because that's going to be kind of an issue. Yeah, the solventless is kind of something I really believe in.
So solventless and CBD
don't really mix,
doesn't really give you like scalability.
Return, huh? It's really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew it.
I mean, honestly, the return's pretty bad with solvent too, but we're able to
when you're saying 10%, when you were saying 10%, that is not very good. Yeah.
So let's talk about that for a second, because I'm curious, if anyone does ever watch this feed or, for future shows, is there a difference between, just like cannabis, is there a difference between different CBD varietals, different CBD returns? Because, for example, I can have, I'm just about to take a dab of this Bedrock Boogie #1. That's literally all that I got from 12 grams of flour versus this. Well, it's a bad comparison because they're in different jars, but this one gushed like a fountain. So, for example, when you say 5 to 10% return on CBD, is that field CBD, like if you had a lovingly homegrown, like Tara was talking about 15 plants maybe, if she lovingly grew those bushes like the Santa Rosa style bushes you see in High Times, could she get 25% return from those with really terpy blood? Or is it so different that it's never going to happen?
Well, there's a couple factors there. I mean, you've got the fact that people are harvesting and growing relatively sloppy. When you're growing acreage and you're trimming acreage, I mean, half of it's biomass. So biomass, you could take a 20% strain and water it down to, 7-10%, something like that. And then, you take a hit financially per pound, but you're still charging the same dollar per CBD percent per pound, You're just making the processor do more work in the long run. So yeah, you've got the fact that people are being sloppy with their growing and their trimming. And then you have the fact that CBD seems to pull slightly less easily than THC relative to the amount that's in the bud. So if you have a 20% CBD bud, in my experience, you're less likely to pull that full 20% out than with a THC bud. If I have something that's 20%, I can usually yield 20+%.
Why is that? Are the trichomes, are they in a different place in the trichomes? Are the trichomes a different shape? What is it, do you think?
That is a really good question. I don't know 100%. I wonder if
is it possibly because the genetics were just dog shit until now? And I say that rhetorically because I don't know the answer. Like when you look at a lot of flower, especially breeders, before they nail in their lines, or even I have a couple of nice flowers I want to take from home.
Take a matter of time, honestly.
That's what it is.
I think I don't know, but that from all the conference talk, isn't it? When you think about the conference that we were there at, right? And he was saying how far the auto flowers has come and how far along all the other things have come. So that it's just going to get better, right? It's got to.
Right. It takes like 3 years to make a stable hybrid that with somebody else's true true breeding strain. Like, it takes a really long time to pheno hunt and then actually breed things out and get your heterozygous, homozygous traits kind of nailed down. That takes a long time. And then to make a true breeding strain takes like 20 years. And then, I mean, and you can only start with what nature's given you to start with, or what somebody else has given you to start with. And for the past 100 years or so, the people that have been working on hemp genetics were not trying to breed for CBD because they didn't even know that CBD existed or that there'd be any value for it. They were breeding for hemp. They were breeding for essential fatty acids. They were breeding for fiber. They were breeding for to make shit like hempcrete and Model T's out of hemp and edible oils and burnable fuels. I mean, so what we've been given to work with is a combination of Mother Nature and like hemp that's so low in CBD that people are trying to skip ahead.
So, out of curiosity, the best way right now to extract CBD is what?
I mean, objectively, alcohol.
Okay.
Just
Oh, closed loop type?
yes. Well, so here's the standard process right now. You chill your alcohol. Like, when I say chill, I mean like -40 Fahrenheit, well below freezing, like cryo temps.
Wow, okay.
Sub-zero, between -40 and -80. You're trying to run cold. The THC soluble at that temperature, but the fats and lipids and waxes and other bullshit isn't.
Huh.
So you get your shit really, really cold. There's a variety of methods to do that. Lab freezers, liquid nitrogen, water and air cooled chillers. You chill your alcohol, you soak your material in the alcohol. Then you use almost exclusively centrifugal action, big spinners like a washing machine or a vegetable spinner, to pull about 99% of that alcohol out of that material. Then you take that same alcohol and you reuse it with that same amount of material at least once more, sometimes another time after that. Continue to spin. You're spinning. Some people take a screw press and are dewatering press, and they get that last little bit of ethanol out of their material afterwards.
So when you're saying, I'm sorry, I'm so ignorant about this that this is probably a stupid question, but when you say you're spinning it, are you working on the different weight, the different molecular weight or whatever of the alcohol versus the oil then?
At that one point, you are removing your ethanol solution, which contains all your cannabinoids, from the plant material, which is in a mesh sock.
Got it.
And
so you're like, when you're saying like spin it, like it's the product's actually spinning like a spinner, like a.
So imagine, like literally think about your washing machine.
Yeah, like it's spinning out of it, right?
Imagine a washing machine with holes on the side, and instead of your clothes, you put in a giant thing of pantyhose full of weed.
Right.
So you got the mesh bag, you got the smaller or larger holes on the side to allow liquid to go through. You're using centrifugal action to remove all of that liquid from your plant material because you want that ethanol, because that ethanol is where your cannabinoids are. You're going to take that ethanol that you wash with plant material 2 or 3 times, and you're going to then, typically, some people skip this step if they already run cold enough and if they already have inline filters, but typically people are then re-chilling, refreezing, winterizing, if we will, from that earlier conversation, and then they're putting it through filters, sometimes to remediate color, sometimes to pull out more waxes, handful of reasons.
Whatever, depends on what they need the product for then, right?
Right. So then they have to recover that alcohol. So some people are using rotary evaporators, but most of us have grown out of it to the point that they're using falling film evaporators or rising film evaporators. They cost about $100,000,
Holy cow.
and they recover about 3+ gallons of ethanol an hour. So, I mean, it's like I said, it's scaling up. Because if you're using the rotary evaporators, you're getting stuck at liters an hour, not gallons a minute. You know what I mean?
And so it's just that cost of entry. You need $100,000, $200,000 machine, and then you can go apeshit.
Right. And these centrifugal spinners, the ones that hook up to chillers that a lot of people are using that can do, 30 pounds at a time every 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Those are $100,000, $125,000 machines as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, for instance, like one of the most common ones, the Delta SEP, the Delta 15 and 30, those go for like $125,000 a pop.
So is it because they're totally worth it, or there's just no other competition out there and they have the patent on it?
Well, it's not totally worth it in the sense where if you have the right know-how and a little can-do attitude and you're trying to ball on a budget, you can literally take a washing machine, an upright washing machine, and replace the gaskets with stuff that's capable of handling solvents. And you can literally run. There's a GE washing machine I'll send you a link to, and you can build a falling film evaporator. I mean, you're still talking tens of thousands, but not.
You make it out of a washing machine.
You literally a washing machine.
That's hilarious.
I mean, there's.
You buy the washing machine on Black Friday deal.
Have you ever thought about designing your own machine, Eric?
I'm not an engineer, But so the team I work with, or part of the team I work with, are engineers, and they designed and brought the first commercial closed loop system to market.
Oh, very
the technology obviously hundreds of years old, but they were the people who used available materials to provide a safe engineered system. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Skunk Farm, the website.
You mentioned the name, yeah. I don't know.
They've been out of the loop for a couple years now due to a lawsuit that they're kind of tied up in, which is basically the reason that they're not making machines right now, because the circle that they run in and we run in, that we're still active in forums with and people we still talk to, those are the people that are designing the Ace spinner and the Delta SEP. I mean, it's the same group of people that call my partners, for advice and questions and that kind of stuff, but they just legally can't really do anything right now because of the lawsuits they're tied up in. Which actually, we're on YouTube Live. I guess I didn't say any details. We're fine, but
I hope so.
No, we're totally fine.
Everything is alleged.
It's not like a big secret, but it's like at one point, like a year ago, I tried to make a GoFundMe for them, and it got passed around the industry a bit. No one actually donated, but it got a little attention. And their lawyer was like, you should take that down. We don't need any attention. And they launched another website. It's called the Alchemist Resource. After Skunk Farm had been down for 4 or 6 months, it got like a stupid amount of page views in a couple days, like tens of thousands. And then it got pulled, also due to the lawsuit. So, yeah. So they lost, honestly, probably millions of dollars. I think everyone in the industry right now that's making money, closed loops or anything related probably owes them royalties.
Is there, we obviously can't know unless we're plugged into the system or something, but you always hear rumors from Bubbleman or anybody else that there's this fascinating new technology coming across the horizon, not just scaled up, whatever that they have now, solventless water tech, but all kinds of weird magnetic shit and sonic shit. Like, is it likely that stuff in 2, 3, 4 years from now will be so weird that we won't recognize it?
You know, from what I've seen, there's always people making outlandish claims. Like people have been saying, what is it? What's it called? It's a refrigerant. LP. It's an LPE R412. I can't remember the name of the refrigerant, but it's like something people use in their refrigerators and air conditioners that people are like starting to use in some relatively large machines that we might see. I don't know. I've played with some ultrasonic water baths, and I've been seeing people bring that kind of stuff up in forums for a while, and I've heard of static and magnets being used for a while, but I've never seen any like solid proof of concepts.
The
LPE one, the refrigerant one, I've seen some pretty large ones, but I've never seen the hash for sale.
I played around with the static thing for a while.
Yeah,
I bought one of those. I bought one of those sticks, those wonder sticks that have the electricity thing.
Yeah, you're showing that off, right? Yeah. Toy.
Yeah.
Did that work for you?
I think there's something to it, dude. I think there is, but I don't want to deal with it right now.
Well, so I break up weed pounds at a time for processing in a contraption called the Nug Buster, and it's chicken wire splayed over 2x4s, and then I have another 2x4 mesh chicken wire brick that I use to push it through the other screen, and I straddle it over. I'm gonna go turn my light on. It just got a little dark.
Oh, all right. Okay, that was sounding really interesting. He straddles it.
A tote.
He probably needs your unit there.
Plastic tote.
Oh,
Well, yeah, because I want the flour to fall into the plastic tote. And sometimes
put the lotion in the basket. What can you say?
I put the lotion in the basket. And sometimes after grinding up a couple pounds, the sides of the tote will be completely coated with white blonde hash that's stuck from static cling.
Right.
No plant material.
Right.
No plant material, just the hash. So
right.
That's and then that stuff will bubble. Like let's see if I can show you something.
Yeah, there's definitely something to it. I do yeah.
And this thing was like, when I filled it, it was like half full, but it was all fluffy and puffy, and then it just kind of like shrunk in on itself because it was like airy heads.
Yeah.
Did you ever happen to look at those heads under a microscope or anything to see what size they are or anything?
You know what? I wonder. I've got a little microscope right here, I think, but I've got a Chromebook, and it just nothing works with it.
Because I'm just always curious stuff like that, the Static Tech or Johnny B, his first bounce.
I will be right back.
What size checks are those?
Chickens away.
What's that, Tara?
I have to go put my chickens away. I will be right back.
Oh, got it.
Right on. Cassie, you want to put the chickens away?
I don't think they're ready.
They're not ready yet? All right. My chickens aren't ready yet.
You guys have chickens too, huh?
Yeah.
My neighbors have chickens.
Yeah. We got about 8 of them, I think. No, 7.
We thought about getting chickens, but I don't know. It's, as you can imagine, it's a bunch of effort.
Yeah, we've got I think maybe an extra coop we're thinking about rehoming.
Huh.
If you need a coop.
It could be fun. It would be really hilarious to piss off my neighbors with our chickens for a change.
Yeah. If you leave them in the coop a minute after they're used to being fed, they'll start making noise. Because we lock them up every night so the raccoons don't get them. But in the morning, they're like, "Let me out, asshole. I'm ready for mealworms and oyster shells.
I'm really proud of my dog. We encountered a big, probably mama possum and 3 of her baby possums, and she was absolutely freaked out about it. And he took it really well. He was like, "Okay, I respect you." Like we stood our ground, she stood her ground, and we all went our separate ways. I'm not going to make any accusations, but he may or may not have killed a possum maybe like 6 years ago. So
I saw a possum in the field last year, and it startled me so much it fell on my butt, and the possum also like fell back.
that's funny.
My girlfriend got a kick out of it.
I think someone told me that they're in a permanent state of almost paralytic fear, something like that. I don't know.
That would make sense. There's a couple animals kind of like that.
But apparently they're super, super useful. When I was a kid, I used to think they were pests, just like raccoons, you know. But when I was a kid, everything was supposed to be a pest. But evidently they are tick annihilators. So if you have any tick problems, and Oregon has tons of ticks,
You just let a possum crawl all over
absolutely.
you.
And basically any creepy crawly. And apparently their body temperature is so high already, or so low, I don't remember, one of the two, that they almost cannot sustain rabies. So one of the reasons why they don't get rabies is that their body temperature is wrong for it. So maybe it's already too hot. It doesn't matter. We can look it up. So they're very unlikely to pass that on while eating a shitload of pests that can.
Huh.
Mice and all kinds. And then not to mention cockroaches and whatever else.
You know, if I had to like make a list of animals that I would suspect had rabies, I feel like possums would definitely have been on there. I feel like they have a bad rep.
You see? They got a bad rap, man.
Yeah,
And they're the only North American marsupial that I know about. Come on, how cool is that? Are you a North American marsupial? I sure am not.
No, I had my pouch removed.
And I wear cargo pants anyway, so it's like
Right.
the pouches.
I'm trying to think of another. I thought there was a American flying squirrel. I thought one of
And
the
is it a
I
marsupial?
thought like between flying squirrels and sugar gliders, I thought one of them was native to North America. And I thought they
I mean,
had.
ironically, they say the camel was native to America, but I guess they spread to Africa and then died out here or something.
I was just listening to a podcast with Pablo Escobar's brother's
What?
daughter.
That's fascinating.
And basically, she was just like talking about growing up, and she's like, "Yeah, so my uncle Pablo had hippos, and apparently they're super territorial. And when he got arrested and everything kind of went to shit, they gave away all of his animals, but the hippos were too territorial, so they couldn't get introduced to any other zoos." And then they were like, "We'll send them back to Africa." And Africa's like, "Well, no, they could have diseases from your river, and they could fuck with our hippos. We don't want them." So they left them in the enclosure,
Right.
and then they busted out. And now there's a South American species of hippos that is literally its own subspecies now because they eat different things and have different like gut bacteria, and there's like 100 of them.
I'm sure they can breed together, but yeah, eventually they will look slightly different.
Well, yeah, maybe species isn't the right word. It's their own, I don't know, genus of hippo.
It's been a long time since we took biology. None of us. I know what you're saying.
I pull the
It's his own
books
version.
out once in a while looking for plant answers. I was flipping through Robert Donald Clark's book today.
Oh yeah, nice.
Well, I was preparing for a lecture on cloning. I've got a hemp farmer that wants to clone 10,000 plants off a couple hundred mothers over the next month or so. So that's the consultation I was supposed to be doing today, but it got postponed.
Yeah. That happens.
Did you ever invite 710?
What about 710?
Did we ever put the link to Instagram? I forgot to put that over there.
I actually think I forgot to.
Okay.
I don't know. What do you guys think? You want to wrap it up soon, or?
I don't care.
I'm just saying so because I know it's actually great. What's that?
It's almost 9. Yeah, I mean.
I got a plumber coming in the morning. I got to do a ton of stuff beforehand.
Right.
But it was really interesting. I'd like to talk more about all the different processes. Like in the future, I'd love to talk about. It's Hash Wednesday, right? So it'd be nice to talk about how hash is made, and also I think it's really topical how CBD is made, and I think a lot of people in the future are going to be making artisanal CBD. I don't see any reason why they won't. So I'm curious. We can debate that. Maybe people
Let's try to find somebody who's doing it locally.
Mhm.
And when I say artisanal, I don't mean like they're a small company and they're just making the same products, maybe not even
No,
as
but doing it well,
good.
yeah.
They're kind of pass it off as small batch.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, like they're actually doing something different, like
Mhm.
CBD rosin or I don't know.
Yeah, I
Well,
was.
maybe there isn't anyone, so we'll have to look. Maybe there's only amateurs so far. We'll see. We'll have
There's
to.
a company called Phyto Dabs, I think,
Hmm.
based out of Colorado, and they reached out to me a year or two ago wanting to do collabs because
Mhm.
they know the old Skunk Farm team.
Hmm.
But I looked at their website when they reached out, and they had CBD shatters and CBD waxes and terped up isolates, and they seem to be doing pretty damn cool.
Very cool.
Do you think
But
before we take it?
solvents.
Oh, with solvents.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming that all started with ethanol or butane.
Hmm.
But they might have CBD rosin on their site. I haven't checked recently.
What's your gut sense before we leave for the week or whatever? We'll probably, this is probably a question that'll come up more and more. We'll probably have different answers for it as time goes on. Do you feel like CBD is going to be one of the methods for all the collaborative co-op model people who talk about craft cannabis, collaborative cannabis, regenerative cannabis? Tara knows what I'm talking about. The regenerative conference, the cultivation classic, all those people think that there's a future for craft, but of course they also know that there's this really brutal Budweiser war with THC coming. Is CBD potentially one of the safety valves for that, or is it going to be just as brutal as THC? I guess that's the question.
I think CBD is going to hit that mainstream Budweiser level before THC. Like
Because it's already
THC is
legal and so on.
getting close, but I mean CBD. Look at how many
Because of the whole, drug thing.
And I think CBD's interesting and exciting right now because everybody's kind of allowed to grow it and it doesn't get you high.
Yep.
But neither does CBG or a handful of other, cannabinoids that are going to start popping up soon. I'd be curious to see if those take the place of CBD.
What's the new one? CVG I've been hearing about, I think, right? You just mentioned.
Yeah, that's the one that there's some stable lines that are going to come out this year. Crawford's notably, but there's a couple other people that claim to have some that they've sold to,
And when you say that, you mean, I actually, because we were listening to him talk, and I don't know, I was distracted or something. You mean CVG dominant varietals or just high in CVG?
He claims they're a true type 4, and type 4 would be basically all CBG, or maybe like arguably less than 1% or less than 0.3% other cannabinoids.
Interesting.
He claimed that he's got a CBG strain that gets 17% CBG. He didn't say how much of the other cannabinoids. I'm assuming at least 1% because everything else I've seen of theirs combined THC's too hot. But we'll see. And he also said they've got a CBG autoflower for next year.
And how did they discover that plant? I mean, obviously we didn't read their mind, but did they run 10,000 plants every single year and run tests on all 10,000 to find that one outlier, or what is it?
I mean, I'm sure that they did some pretty large pheno hunts, whether they had their own testing equipment or they hired a third party. But I'm sure they had to start with something that was high in CBG, and then they weren't just taking random cannabis strains and hoping they'd find a CBG strain. They had to. There's South American varietals and Australian varietals that have like weird cannabinoid profiles.
And what are some? I mean, again, we have no idea. Do you have any idea about things that we haven't even heard about? Terpenes that Tara and I haven't even put on our radar? Or
I mean,
just for subjects for the future, basically.
terpenes, I don't know. I know once again they say South America and Australia and Jamaica are going to have some like crazy different terpenes. But right now,
Really excited about
what's
some
the
of this
point
stuff.
of crazy different terpenes when we don't even have affordable, accessible, normal terps? Like I guess you can get D-limonene. I guess you could get a big old jug of D-limonene, but I don't know. You kind of need the whole profile. I don't think you can
I
just.
see what you're talking about. So why hunt CBG from some exotic varietal from Zanzibar when you can't even replicate the normal cannabis-derived limonene because it's too goddamn expensive? That's where you're getting at, right?
Right. Well, maybe not CBG, but at least some weird terpene.
Hmm.
Because we've already got our cannabinoids down pretty well here. So, I mean, I wouldn't mind getting into CBG. But as far as terpenes are concerned, when I'm buying botanical derived terpene blends that are supposed to replicate cannabis, they freaking suck.
Yeah, we
So
discussed
it's
that.
like
Yeah.
so it's like if we find a terpene in one of these weird South African or Australian or Japanese or whatever
Hmm.
grown plant just because of the sun or the strain or what have you, and then we try to replicate it, it's either going to be crazy expensive to actually extract it and bring it over, or it's going to be poorly replicated.
Hmm.
I would think. I don't know if you've had any experience with the botanical terpenes, like, through
Just a
terps.
bit. I mean, certainly I've smelled them at the trade shows, and I have to be perfectly honest, none of them have smelled right. And then I'm always very polite, and I always say, "Oh yeah, it smells like oranges," but it always smells fake to me.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but then I guess I've certainly tried. I used to vape, I guess I should say. So I actually have tried some of the so-called natural terpenes, but they're, I guess, water-soluble ones because I made my own vape juices or whatever, and of course they couldn't be oil. Um, I hated all of those actually. I used to vape because I hated it so much because it was just so weird tasting. So I'm not a big fan, to be honest.
So, yeah, I don't know exactly the path that took us to that point.
Well, I was just curious to see what we'll talk about in the future. I'm really curious to talk about terpenes and how they will. Well, first of all, terpene modulation, flavor modulation. I run the cannabis tasting club, so I want to talk about flavors and how they change and how your experience of them changes. Um, all that kind of stuff would be really interesting. Or
I
new
think
varietals that we haven't heard about, from South America and Africa.
I think over the next couple years, what I'd like to see, or what we might see, is that hemp is going to refer to essential fatty acids and fibers and varietals not grown specifically for a chemical. Like sensimilla, I feel they're either gonna to call it all hemp, or they're gonna classify like you know what I mean. It's when you're growing stuff for chemicals, I think we're going to see the stigma of cannabis go away as more and more cannabis that doesn't get you high but still has medicinal value
Mhm.
is available. If it's all CBG or all CBC or all, you know, CBD, and it still has terpenes and cannabinoids and wakens your endocannabinoid system, I think the way that we grow it and sell it and market it is going to be vastly different. I don't know how exactly, but I mean,
I think you're completely on the right track, but I also think people forget because everyone talks about the medical, and I get that. I use it medically too. It essentially saved my life. I have to be perfectly honest, but I also really enjoy the fuck out of cannabis. So, Jesus Christ, I always lose my train of thought when I get fucking high. Ladies and gentlemen,
right.
that was such a good point I was going to make too. Oh, how we're going to normalize. And I guess I was going to say, in the terms of how gay marriage, homosexual relationships, they became normalized within my lifetime, certainly, and even in that lifetime within 10, 15 years. It went from 10, 15 years ago, it was weird to have gay relationships on TV. Now it's super normal. Like they
The
even talk about
things
Game
we
of
could
Thrones.
say in middle school.
Oh, totally horrible.
Oh
I
my
mean, just
god.
the stuff that I said, just horrifying. Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my
yeah.
god.
And the
The
worst thing
things
is,
I
like,
heard
when I
in
think
Boy
back, I'm like,
Scouts.
I didn't even really mean it because I don't give a shit what people do right in their bedroom. So it was like a cultural thing, right? So anyway,
You
however
would
that
never
is, that
call that
peer
scary. You'd
pressure.
call that lame.
What's that?
say that's gay when you meant that's lame.
Sure.
Like that was just the
Sure.
colloquialism.
Yeah. No, and then a lot of times people even meant that something that was bad was gay. You know, when you think back on it, it was all like when something's swishy or whatever. Everyone knows what that means, right? But times change, right?
Absolutely.
I guess what I was going to say is, in the same vein, once you start seeing like people puff a joint on TV or a movie or even reality television, and the people don't go ape shit insane, they don't rip their face off like the guys with the bath salts, the sky doesn't fall, and they have perfectly normal conversations like Scotty talks about on the Dude Grow show. Like he'll stand there and smoke a joint and have a perfectly intelligent, interesting conversation, ask engaging questions of the other person, but he's obviously high as balls with that big fat joint. That will change people's perception of what weed is. Because right now, like people don't think too much of you standing there with a martini and having an interesting conversation. They don't call you a lush alcoholic or whatever. They're like, you're a sophisticated person. But if you stand there with a joint, you're a fucking weirdo. And I guess the point is to normalize.
The people that are helping break through, like Ethan Russo or Dr. Rachel Knox or Dr. David Meary or any of these brilliant people that will speak on CBN or the front page of the AOL or Yahoo or whatever. These are not people who will have a joint in their hand. They're not Mark Emery, they're well spoken and they're pro cannabis and they will probably admit to using, but Ethan Russo believes in cannabis hypermesis syndrome and Dr. Rachel Knox is she'll be quick to say don't overconsume and microdose and you don't want to or need to get high. And it's like, so the people that are pro cannabis aren't, at least that the public's looking up to, that they're fighting the stigma. A lot of them are very, I wouldn't say anti cannabis because they're pro cannabis, but they're not necessarily for the culture or
well, that's it. Aren't they pro their fiefdom? Like we were talking about, we don't have to mention who it is, but we were talking about particular seed breeders who, after having kind of locked down some traits, they lobbied, we hear rumors of this in every state probably, they lobbied their states to pass the rules to favor them, right? Like, isn't it on some level if some doctor is in business with a cannabis company who does microdoses or their medical path is going to lead them to microdose treatments, isn't it in her interest to basically always advocate microdoses and always shit on everything else? And I guess my point with that is that an honest arbiter of the culture? Is that someone we really want to advocate for us and normalize for us? Don't we want to talk louder than that person, maybe?
Yeah. That's
I'm kind of talking out loud, but
yeah, for sure.
Half the people on Hash Church, I'm not going to say anything about on Hash Church, but none of them smoke. None of them smoke on Hash Church.
Well, that's also one of the reasons that I wanted to do a podcast, and thank you so much for hosting, because my internet would let me. But like, I don't know. I think it's important to go out there and kind of spread whatever knowledge I can to destigmatize the plant, destigmatize it as, as medicine and as an industry.
Exactly. And knowledge is power, and that's what we need. And we all need to help one another.
Indeed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think? Maybe have a good evening.
All right.
So, if anyone ever does watch this broadcast, this is my first broadcast. Welcome. That's Pharmex, Oregon, the last OMMP processor in the state. I finally got the name right.
Yep.
And Tara Lee Live, who's taking a dab, and that's me. If you manage to stick out to the end, boy, I salute you. You better DM me or something. If you actually manage to watch the end of the video, DM me somehow, and I will give you something. I don't know.
We should put this on the Weed Tube as well, because the viewer ratio. Like
this first one, are you sure about this first one?
Well, maybe not, but at the same time, my thought is there's so much crap out there, you might as well just throw it out. You gotta get it
I have a whole bunch on my YouTube channel. I could totally put some of my stuff on there.
We'll try to figure it out. So first I'll have to figure out how to stop broadcast and see if I can actually upload it there and all that kind of stuff. We'll see.
All right. Good luck.
Hopefully next week. What we will have to do is we'll have to do some test screens before next week.
Eric, you stay here.
I'll stay.
This ends the call.
Okay. I don't want to mess